What would you do if your neighbor kept parking in your driveway after you told her to stop twice? Victor Malone was just trying to enjoy his Saturday morning. The sun had barely cleared the rooftops in Macon, Georgia, when he stepped onto his porch with a mug of coffee and a list of weekend projects tucked in his mind. Patching the fence, trimming the hedges, maybe replacing that janky light in the garage. It was the kind of slow Saturday that reminded him why he bought this place. A corner lot, two-car driveway, big oak tree in the front. Peace. But then he saw it. A beige SUV, parked, right in his driveway, like it belonged there. Victor stood still, his coffee halfway to his lips. He blinked, tilted his head slightly, like maybe his eyes were lying to him. But no, there it was. Driver's side facing the street, rear tires kissing the edge of his garage. No note, no person in sight, just sitting there like someone had left it for valet. At first, he thought maybe it was a delivery person. Maybe someone dropped something off and got turned around. But when 20 minutes passed and nobody came back, he walked over and checked the plates. That's when it clicked. It was the same SUV he'd seen parked crooked along the curb at the HOA meetings. Beige, with those corny little bumper stickers about good neighbors build great communities. He didn't know her name, but he'd seen the woman before. Short, late 50s, cropped hair, always walking fast with a clipboard like she was late for a job nobody gave her. Victor let out a sigh. He didn't want drama. Not over a driveway. He'd just moved in 2 months ago. This wasn't how he wanted to meet his neighbors. So when he saw her the next morning, walking briskly down the sidewalk with that same clipboard tucked under her arm, he called out, "Excuse me, ma'am?" She stopped and turned around. Bright blue track jacket, aviator sunglasses, smile tight as a shoelace. "Yes?" Victor pointed toward his driveway. "That your SUV?" She squinted. "Oh, yes. Just left it there for a bit. I usually park at the end of the block during my morning walk, but the curb was full." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Right. It's just... that's my driveway." "Oh, I know. I figured it wouldn't be a problem, just for 20 minutes or so." Victor gave a polite chuckle, trying not to sound irritated. "Well, I do use it. I mean, it's part of my house." She tilted her head like he was being difficult. "I didn't think anyone would mind. I'm part of the HOA board. We usually keep things flexible around here." Flexible? He wasn't sure what kind of HOA she thought this was, but he knew what his driveway was and what it wasn't. Still, he nodded. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't park there again." She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, no problem." And for a few days, she didn't. But then on Thursday morning, Victor came out to find the SUV there again. Same spot, same angle, like nothing had ever been said. He didn't go looking for her this time. He just took a photo, texted it to himself, and backed his own car out a little too carefully. His bumper missed hers by about 4 inches. That evening, she was at the HOA meeting again, talking loudly about community standards and property value preservation. She didn't look at him once, but when he got home that night, a flyer had been taped to his front door. Lawn maintenance guidelines. Victor stared at it, then laughed. The edges of his grass were maybe half an inch uneven. Definitely not a crime in a suburb where half the houses hadn't been power washed since Bush was president. So now it was a game, and Victor hated games. But games get real fast when people stop listening, and Carolyn clearly wasn't interested in listening. Saturday morning came around again, and Victor was ready this time. He parked his car flush against the garage door the night before and left the rest of the driveway empty on purpose. Not because he was expecting her, just because he knew she'd take the bait. And sure enough, at 7:13 a.m., Carolyn's beige SUV rolled up like clockwork. No hesitation. She pulled in, clicked the hazard lights on, stepped out with her earbuds in and her clipboard tucked under her arm, and started power walking down the sidewalk like she was auditing the neighborhood for a living. Victor waited about 30 seconds, just enough for her to round the corner, then walked over and stood by her car. He folded his arms and stared at it like he was trying to decide whether to report it or push it into the street himself. Then he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. She came jogging back around the corner, earbuds out now, eyebrows lifted like he was the one out of line. "Is something wrong?" she asked, panting slightly. "I'm almost done with my walk." Victor looked at her, then at the SUV. "We talked about this last week." She wiped her forehead with the sleeve of her jacket. "I know. but the street's packed again, and I was just going around the block. I didn't want to be late for my HOA duties." He nodded slowly. "You realize this is private property, right? Like, this isn't overflow parking." Carolyn blinked at him, genuinely baffled. "Are you being serious right now?" Victor tilted his head. "Would you park in someone else's driveway on this street?" She didn't answer. He waited a beat, then added, "Look, I've got errands. I can't keep working around someone else's car. I've been polite, but this is getting disrespectful." Carolyn let out a breath like she was the one inconvenienced. "I've lived here for 15 years. I've never had a neighbor treat me like this." Victor's eyebrows went up. "You mean tell you not to park in their driveway?" She didn't respond to that, just walked around to her driver's side door, muttering something about courtesy and new folks with no community spirit. Victor didn't say anything else. He just watched her pull out, her tires squealing a little as she reversed. She paused halfway down the street, rolled her window down and called out, "Maybe you should come to more HOA meetings. Might help you settle in better." He didn't answer, just went inside and closed the door. Later that afternoon, he told his cousin about it over the phone. "Bruh," his cousin said, laughing into the receiver. "You sure you didn't move into one of those Stepford neighborhoods?" Victor chuckled but shook his head. "I just didn't think I'd have to defend my driveway, man. I got enough going on. Work's a beast, and I just want to cut my grass and watch ESPN without someone treating my house like a damn parking lot." His cousin offered a solution that made Victor pause. "Get a sign. Private property tow-away zone. Post it right where she parks." Victor considered it, but part of him was still hoping it wouldn't come to that. Until Monday morning. He was halfway out the door, lunch packed, laptop bag over his shoulder, when he stopped cold. The SUV was back. This time it wasn't even centered. It was crooked, like she'd rushed in and didn't care if she blocked half the sidewalk. A newspaper sat on her windshield. She hadn't even taken it in. Victor didn't bother looking for her. He just pulled out his phone, snapped another picture, and opened the HOA contact list he'd been given in his welcome packet. He found the general inbox, typed a short email, attached the photos, and hit send. Then he installed a Ring camera facing the driveway. That night, there was no response from the HOA, but there was a knock on the door around 7:30 p.m. Victor opened it to find Carolyn standing on his porch with a sheet of paper in her hand and a look on her face that made it clear. She knew. "I got your email," she said. "You didn't have to go that route. You could have spoken to me directly." "I did," Victor said, voice calm. She waved the paper a little. "This feels aggressive." He crossed his arms. "So does blocking my driveway 3 times in 1 week." They stared at each other in silence for a moment. Carolyn's face tightened. "I'll make sure not to park there again," she said. "I hope we can move past this." Victor nodded once. "That's all I ever wanted." She turned and walked away. Victor stood in the doorway for a few seconds longer, the silence around him suddenly very loud. But when someone thinks the rules don't apply to them, they don't usually stop after a warning. For a week, nothing happened. Victor thought maybe that was the end of it. No SUV, no flyers, no awkward encounters, just work, yard work, and quiet evenings watching basketball with his feet up. He even caught himself thinking, maybe she just needed that push. Maybe she got the message. Then one afternoon, as he pulled into his driveway, something fluttered near the mailbox, a neon orange card stuck into the crack between the wood and the slot. Yard appearance infraction notice. Victor stared at it for a long moment before pulling it out. His grass wasn't long, his hedges weren't wild. The card was a generic form letter with checkboxes, and one was marked, "Uneven edging along walkway. Please address within 5 business days." Victor looked up and down the block. Half the houses had worse lawns than his, including the bungalow across the street where old Mr. Jennings hadn't mowed since Memorial Day. Victor's walkway was tidy, nothing egregious. This felt personal. He didn't even bother calling the HOA this time. Instead, he grabbed a pair of garden shears, tidied the edge just for show, and let it go. He wasn't going to feed her game, not yet. But things kept happening, quiet things. One morning, his trash bins were dragged 2 feet into the street instead of left flush to the curb. Another day, someone chalked a big arrow on the sidewalk pointing to his house with the words, "Needs power washing," scrawled beside it. And then there was the dog poop. 2 separate days, same spot, right on the edge of his front walkway. No bag, no cleanup. It was all small stuff. petty stuff. But it built up, like water dripping slowly into a cup. Victor started keeping a notebook, dates, times, little things he noticed. Nothing major enough to make a fuss about individually, but together, it painted a picture. The final straw came during a Zoom meeting at work. He was at his desk, deep into a coding sprint, when his doorbell rang. It was 11:30 a.m. He checked the ring feed. Carolyn was standing there, arms crossed, looking directly into the camera. He hesitated, then answered through the intercom. "Can I help you?" Her tone was sweet, too sweet. "Hey there, I noticed your recycling bin was left out past 10 a.m. again. Just wanted to give you a heads up. It's in the HOA handbook." Victor blinked. "You rang my doorbell for that?" "I figured a friendly reminder would be better than another notice." "Got it. I'll make sure to set an alarm." She smiled, then leaned in a little. "Just trying to keep the neighborhood looking nice." The ring camera caught everything. Her face, her tone, the smirk she wore as she walked away. Victor sat back in his chair and exhaled. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't being sensitive. This was calculated. He called his friend Darnell that night. Darnell lived a few hours away in Columbus and had spent the last 2 years dealing with his own HOA nightmares. Victor laid it all out. She's not yelling, she's not threatening, but it's this constant slow burn, like she's trying to remind me I don't quite fit. Darnell didn't miss a beat. "You know what you're dealing with, right?" Victor didn't say anything. "She sees you as temporary, like your name's written in pencil, and hers is in pen." Victor stared at his notebook. "I'm not going anywhere." "Then start acting like it," Darnell said. "You pay dues like everybody else. You got receipts. Time to stop playing defense." Victor didn't respond right away, but later that night, he ordered 2 metal signs online. "Private property. Driveway parking by permit only. Violators will be towed." And just beneath it, in bold, "This is not a public parking space." He posted one by the garage, the other at the end of the driveway near the sidewalk. 2 days later, someone peeled one of them halfway off the post. Victor laughed when he saw it, but this time he didn't just take a photo. He called the towing company and asked them exactly what they needed to enforce a tow. Thursday morning started like any other. Victor was up by 6:30, showered, dressed, and sipping coffee by the window when he glanced outside and nearly dropped his mug. There it was again, the beige SUV. But this time, it wasn't just in his driveway. It was all the way up, nose nearly kissing the garage, crooked and wide like someone had parked in a rush or didn't care how much space they took up. It was blocking both his car and the walkway to his front door. Victor stood there for a full 5 seconds, blinking. He grabbed his phone, walked outside, and started taking pictures from every angle, license plate, distance from the sidewalk, even one from the side, to show how impossible it would be to get his car out without scraping her bumper. He checked his ring footage. She'd parked just 20 minutes earlier. Victor stared at the screen. She practically swung the SUV in and jogged off down the sidewalk, earbuds in again, like it was a routine. Only this time, she didn't come back right away. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Victor had already missed a morning call with his team and was halfway through emailing his boss when he saw her approaching through the Ring app. Clipboard still in hand, still jogging. No rush in her step. Victor stepped outside and stood by the hood of her car, arms crossed. She looked surprised to see him. "Oh," she said, tugging out one earbud. "Good morning. I was just finishing up my rounds." Victor didn't smile. "Why are you parked in my driveway again?" She paused, like the question caught her off guard. "It was just for a little bit. The street's full again." He stared. "That's not my problem." She blinked. "Excuse me?" Victor took a step forward, voice calm but sharp. "You're blocking me in. I had meetings this morning. You didn't even ask. This is not your property." Carolyn tilted her head, then gave a slight laugh. "Are you always this territorial, Victor? It's just a driveway." "It's my driveway." Her expression shifted, just a flicker, but enough to show she heard the edge in his voice. She walked to her car, keys already in hand. "Well, if you're going to be this uptight about it, maybe I should bring it up at the next board meeting." Victor didn't respond. He just filmed her as she backed out. And just like before, she paused before driving off, rolling the window down. "You know, a lot of us are trying to keep this neighborhood clean and welcoming," she said. "Maybe you should consider being part of the solution instead of creating tension." Then she was gone. Victor went inside, more irritated than angry. He opened his laptop, forwarded the new batch of photos to the HOA inbox, and added a short note. Repeated violation, blocking access to my home, requesting formal action or documentation for private enforcement. Later that evening after work, he went outside to take the trash out and froze. Tucked under the mat on his porch was a folded piece of printer paper, no envelope. He opened it, typed no signature. Your lawn edges are not within community standards. Please review page 9 of the HOA handbook. Curb appeal is a shared responsibility. Victor held the paper in his hand, jaw tight. It wasn't even official. It wasn't on HOA letterhead, no logo, no date. Just passive pressure, pretending to be policy. He walked inside and taped the letter above his desk, right next to his growing notebook of incidents. That night, he pulled up the HOA rules again, page by page, and started highlighting anything that could help him. Property rights, vehicle violations, towing clauses. Fine print most people never read. By midnight, he had the local towing company's number programmed into his phone. Not a maybe, not a threat. He was done asking. Because when someone parks on your property after being told not to, repeatedly, it's no longer a misunderstanding. It's a message. Victor didn't sleep much that night. Not because he was worried, he was past that, but because his brain wouldn't stop running the scenarios. How many times did he have to ask nicely? How long would he be expected to be the bigger person before that expectation just became silence? By morning, the decision was made. He poured his coffee, opened the blinds, and almost laughed when he saw the beige SUV creeping down the street again, like clockwork. It paused briefly in front of his driveway, then eased in like she was entitled to the concrete under her wheels. Same careless angle, same confidence, as if the signs he'd posted meant nothing. Victor walked outside while she was still getting out. "Carolyn," he said evenly, "you're going to want to move your car." She looked up, not even pretending to be surprised. "Victor, you really need to let this go. It's just temporary." "No, it's trespassing." She let out a dry laugh. "You're really blowing this out of proportion. You're acting like I keyed your car or something." He took a breath. "I've asked, I've warned, I've filed reports. You've ignored every single one." Carolyn crossed her arms. "I'm not trying to start trouble, but this whole attitude you've got, it's not helping anyone." Victor reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed. "Yeah," he said into the receiver. "I've got a car in my driveway, unauthorized. I'm the property owner, signs are posted. I've got security footage." Carolyn's eyes widened. "Wait, you're seriously calling a tow?" "I'm done asking," he said plainly. She rushed to the car. "This is ridiculous. You're really going to have me towed over a few minutes of parking? Who does that?" Victor didn't answer. He just walked back inside, leaving the front door open so she could hear the dispatcher confirming a truck was en route. 22 minutes later, the tow truck backed in, big and slow. Carolyn was pacing, phone to her ear, gesturing wildly at the driver, then at Victor's Ring camera, then back at her car. The driver didn't engage. He looked at Victor, who came out with his ID and proof of ownership. Within minutes, the SUV was hooked and lifted off the pavement. Carolyn watched it rise like she was watching her dignity float away. "You'll regret this," she snapped as the truck began rolling toward the street. "I'm going to file a harassment complaint. I'll take this to the board." Victor shrugged. "I've already emailed the board, with pictures and timestamps." She stared at him, caught between embarrassment and rage. Then she stormed off on foot, calling someone as she disappeared around the corner. Victor didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He just stood there, watching the taillights of the tow truck vanish, and felt neutral. Not victorious, just tired. That afternoon, the neighborhood app blew up. One of the neighbors, someone with a doorbell cam across the street, had caught the whole tow on video. No commentary, no edits, just raw footage of Carolyn losing her mind in front of Victor's house. It started getting shared, first on the app, then someone clipped it and posted it to Facebook. By evening, it had hit a local suburban drama group on Instagram. The comments were ruthless. Imagine ignoring a sign and a neighbor's warning just to end up getting towed. She thought HOA meant she could park wherever she wanted. Girl, no. That man told her 3 times. You can't even feel bad at that point. Victor didn't say a word. He didn't respond to comments, didn't engage in threads. He just read quietly while sipping his tea. But the video didn't stay local for long. By Friday morning, it had 30,000 views. Someone uploaded it to TikTok with dramatic music and text overlay, "When you think the HOA makes you untouchable." And just like that, it stopped being about driveways and started being about pride. Victor hoped that would be the end of it. He really did. After the tow, there were 3 quiet days. No car, no notes, no knock on the door pretending to be friendly. Carolyn disappeared like she'd gone on a retreat to process the embarrassment. Victor started to exhale again. Then Tuesday morning rolled around. Victor opened his door, lunch bag in one hand, work laptop in the other, only to stop cold. There it was, the SUV, back. Same spot, same angle, same blatant disrespect. Except this time, it was almost parked deeper, as if to say, "What are you gonna do, tow me again?" Victor stared at it for a moment, blinking like maybe he'd woken up in some kind of Groundhog Day loop. Then he pulled out his phone, calmly dialed the same towing company, and said, "She's back." They didn't even ask many questions this time. They knew the address. While he waited, Victor went inside and poured himself a coffee. He wasn't angry, he wasn't shocked. He was done. 15 minutes later, the tow truck arrived, same driver as before. Carolyn must have seen it from down the street because she came sprinting toward the house in house slippers and a full face of panic, robe flapping, screaming, "Wait, wait!" The tow truck didn't stop. Victor came outside just as the driver was hooking the front end of the SUV. Carolyn nearly tripped over her slippers as she reached the curb. "You can't do this again. This is harassment. I was only parked here for 20 minutes. Victor didn't even flinch. "Doesn't matter. Signs are posted. You were warned. Again." She whirled around to face him. "I thought we talked about this." Victor kept his voice even. "We did, more than once." The tow truck finished hooking. The driver gave Victor a quick nod and started lifting. Carolyn stepped in front of the truck, arms out like she was about to block it. "I live here. You can't treat me like I'm some stranger." Victor raised an eyebrow. "You parked in my driveway. Again. After being told not to. Again." She started shouting over the engine. "You're making this personal. You want to play the victim, but you're just stirring the pot." Victor looked her straight in the eye. "No, I'm enforcing boundaries. You're just not used to hearing no." That's when the neighbor across the street, Deshaun, the retired Army vet who'd mostly kept quiet through the whole situation, opened his front door. "You want me to email you this footage too?" he called out. Carolyn froze. Victor turned confused. "You recording?" Deshaun held up his phone with a grin. "Been live since she came running out in those slippers." Carolyn turned 3 shades of red. "Turn that off," she snapped. "This is a private matter." Deshaun shook his head. "Not on someone else's property, it's not." The tow truck began pulling off slowly, SUV in tow once again. Carolyn screamed after it, some combination of unbelievable and lawsuit, then stormed down the street on foot, muttering and crying. Victor didn't say a word. He just stood there, arms folded, watching it all unfold. Later that evening, Deshaun knocked on Victor's door. "Yo," he said with a smile. "This clip's going nuts. My niece posted it to Twitter and somebody already made a remix with theme music." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Remix?" "Yeah, like, full soundtrack, drama score, zoom effects, everything." He pulled out his phone and showed Victor. Sure enough, there it was. A short, dramatic video showing Carolyn yelling in slow motion while her SUV got lifted into the air. Cut to Victor sipping coffee, then Deshaun's voice from off-screen. "You want me to email you this footage too?" The internet ate it up. 100,000 views in 12 hours, thousands of comments. This man deserves an award for patience. Not the slippers again. Boundaries are beautiful. That tow truck is my spirit animal. Victor couldn't help but smile this time. But the smile faded just a little when he checked the HOA portal that night. Still no response to his complaints. Still no formal acknowledgement. Because while some neighbors were laughing, others were watching, and not all of them liked what they saw. The following week, Victor started noticing the shift. At first, it was small. Quiet nods from a few neighbors he hadn't spoken to before. A thumbs up from the mail carrier. Deshaun gave him a grin every time he passed by with his dog, always adding, "You're famous now," with a laugh. But then came the cold shoulders. The woman on the corner, Beatrice something, stopped waving when she watered her roses. The retired couple 2 doors down began pulling their trash cans in without a glance in his direction. One morning, Victor overheard someone across the hedge mutter the word petty as he mowed his lawn. It didn't take long for the next HOA meeting to come around. Victor almost didn't go, but something told him he needed to show up. He walked in wearing jeans and a polo, took a seat near the back, and sat through 30 minutes of discussion about sprinkler timers and bulk trash schedules before they got to new business. That's when Carolyn cleared her throat. She looked a little more composed than before, still tight-lipped, but no slippers this time. Her hair was curled, her clipboard perfectly balanced in her lap. "I think we need to address what's being shared online," she began, her voice calm but layered with performative concern. "There's been a lot of attention brought to our neighborhood that doesn't reflect who we are." Some people nodded. A few glanced at Victor. "I understand there was a disagreement between neighbors," she continued, "but having video footage shared without consent, along with personal attacks, is not the kind of image we want associated with our community." Victor raised his hand, slowly, quietly. Carolyn tried not to react, but her jaw tightened. "I didn't share anything," Victor said calmly. "That was someone else's footage on public property. My driveway's mine. She parked on it multiple times after being told not to." He let that settle. Carolyn opened her mouth, but he kept going. "I filed reports, sent pictures, requested support, got nothing. But I handled it by the rules, your rules." Silence. Finally, a man from the board, Howard Green, someone who hadn't spoken much before, spoke up. "Well, if signs were posted and it's private property, then he had the right to tow." Carolyn blinked. Another woman, one of the newer residents, chimed in too. "Honestly, it's kind of wild he had to go that far before anyone even backed him up." Victor didn't smile. He wasn't looking for applause. He just wanted acknowledgement. After the meeting, a few people stopped him in the parking lot. Some offered quiet encouragement. Others still avoided his eyes. That was fine. He hadn't moved to be liked. He'd moved for peace. Back home, Victor sat on his porch and watched the sun dip behind the trees. He thought about his dad, who used to say, "You can be polite all day, but if someone keeps stepping on your foot, eventually you've got to move it, or they'll break your toe." That's what it was. He hadn't made a scene. He'd moved his foot. That night, he logged off from the neighborhood app, turned off notifications, and made a decision. From here on out, he'd keep his records, stand his ground, and let the footage speak for itself. He didn't need to yell to be heard. He just needed to be clear. And more than anything, he needed his driveway back. Sometimes the problem isn't that people don't understand your boundaries, it's that they don't respect them. And no amount of HOA titles, smiles, or clipboard walks gives someone the right to treat your home like theirs. So if someone keeps testing you, document it. Stand firm. And never be afraid to say, "This stops here." If you've ever had to deal with a neighbor like Carolyn, or had your peace disturbed by someone who refused to listen, drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. You're not alone.